For the first time in my life, I'm truly free to see the clear-cut forest for the poison sea, to see the waters occupy the shores of Jersey, and I feel alive.
All right. How are you today?
I'm doing pretty good.
All right.
Coming at you from one of our few morning recording sessions.
Yes, morning recording session because it is Halloween, no less, the spookiest day of the year.
Yes, it is.
Yes. All right. So my name is Eris, and welcome back to Calfire Crackpots, number 8. We're going to be talking about Southern California water policy, which is just a mess. And why does Oprah have green grass?
That's a very good question, and we will learn today.
We will. I have some news.
Mm-hmm.
Let me just get the. That's all. That's all the news I have. Just a picture of Joe Manchin. We'll talk more about what's going on. Once this bill finally passes, it is the most painful thing to watch. Ugh. Anyway,
Yeah, Joe Manchin will show up soon enough.
he will. So, what is the deal with Southern California?
We're getting really crunchy now. The deal with Southern California is, even if there is water to go around, that doesn't usually happen throughout the entire year.
No, just water.
Hmm?
No, just water.
Just water?
No, I'm sorry, just Southern California. What happens in Southern California?
In Southern California, well, it depends on where you're asking.
Okay, what I was looking for is annoying people. Only a few though. And
I thought you were more geared towards water policy.
GTA. Most people know Southern California literally just because of GTA, which is surprisingly accurate in terms of location. We'll get into that later. But as we established last episode, we have 3 ways that water gets to Southern California. So the All-American Canal right down here that a bunch of people drown in for the Imperial Valley, and that's 3.1 million acre-feet a year. And then the Colorado River Aqueduct, which is just some pipes, and that's 1.2 million acre-foot a year. And then the California Aqueduct that comes from the north, which is about 3 million acre-foot a year. And the water use in Southern California is a whole hell of a lot more than that. So making up the deficit, we'll get into, but we're going to talk about the Imperial Valley next.
All right.
So I was really proud of the slide name here. So this farmland, it's like pretty much unusable in the summer. It's used for crops that can sustain like 100-degree heat during the day. But in the winter, it's like 70s and pretty dry. So the Imperial Valley produces 2/3 of vegetables eaten by Americans during the winter. A lot for this small area. It's
Yeah.
super productive, super fertile soil, but it needs a lot of water. And this lake right here is not fresh water at all. This is probably one of the saltiest lakes in America, and it is drying fast. This is a graph of 16 years of water level, and it's dropped by about 10, 20 feet since then. And this is a huge
Wow.
lake. But, so global demand for lithium is expected to increase 40-fold in the next 20 years. And the Earth below the Salton Sea is basically Elon Musk's dream. Like, this is pretty much one of the world's largest deposits of lithium under the Salton Sea. So because 80% of the world's raw supply of lithium is in Australia, Chile, and China, so like really not many countries, but it's estimated the Salton Sea could produce about 600,000 tons of lithium per year in the Imperial Valley. So lithium is going to, and already is, an extremely important resource. And if that was able to be produced domestically, that would make electric vehicles a lot cheaper, a bunch of good paying union jobs too as well. It's
Yeah.
wins all around. And if you can make use of mining lithium not in like a forest, but like in the middle of a desolate desert, it's a lot better.
Of course.
Yeah, and 600,000 tons a year would pretty much upend any form of supply chain.
Yeah. So you got a lot of lithium here. what do you think is going to be the ultimate consequence if we did start, tearing up the lake for lithium mines?
So the consequence would be likely destroying the ecosystem in the lake.
Yeah.
But what's better, destroying an ecosystem in Chile or China, or destroying an ecosystem in the United States where the labor is good? And in terms of just raw environmental impact, mining for lithium and potentially altering an ecosystem is far better than continuing with fossil fuels.
Yeah, of course.
Like it's all about opportunity cost. You're not going to do the only way to stop greenhouse gas emissions right away is for everyone to die.
Personally, I think it'd be a little better in terms of
What?
environmental impact just to have it here, even though it's
Yeah.
closer to our backyards.
Yeah,
We're in a country that prioritizes environmental restoration a little bit more.
mhm. And domestic manufacturing is always better. You know, you have better paid jobs, better for the economy.
Oh yeah, of
Because
course.
at the end of the day, environmentalists aren't out to destroy the economy because that's only going to make things worse. It's about a transition in terms of how goods are produced and how good, like what kind of goods you're producing. So if you can domestically manufacture a product that has been known to cause like child labor and exploitation around the world and you can get it domestically, that's just a better look.
Yeah.
All right. So the San Joaquin Basin, that's the southern half of the Central Valley. So the San Joaquin half of the San Joaquin Sacramento Delta. So what is it? It's a big ass river in the southern Central Valley. And the southern Central Valley, you got grapes, raisins, well, they're the same thing. Cotton, nuts, citrus, vegetables, walnuts, oranges, peaches, garlic, a bunch of stuff. It's super good farmland, especially in the fall and winter. And there's also a lot of oil. The southern Central Valley has, without question, the largest oil and gas field in California. The Los Angeles Basin usually has the most fame for that. You have like the oil derricks in people's backyards. But this is just, it's interesting. It's also sitting on a huge bed of freshwater aquifers, which get super depleted in years like this because people's junior water rights, farmers, their junior water rights are curtailed in years like this. And
Yeah,
they
there's just
have
not
to,
enough water for them to.
yeah, they have to drill wells. And because all of the land is sitting on top of a freshwater aquifer, the land sinks. So,
Oh.
yeah, the Central Valley, which is, for the most part, only a few feet above sea level, sinks further. So that's one of the things about accelerating climate change is climate change causes there not to be water, so you drill out more well water, which causes the land to sink, which makes you more vulnerable to flooding. And then there's Death Valley. I like to call it Hell on Earth.
That's pretty
So
much what it is.
yeah, Death Valley is interesting for a few reasons. One, it's where all the Tatooine films in the Star Wars, sorry, all of the Tatooine scenes in the Star Wars films were filmed. So the sand dunes, all the canyons and stuff, that was in Death Valley. So Death Valley is this like huge valley, obviously, in Southern California. The lowest point's about 200 something feet below sea level, and because of that, and there's constantly high pressure above the mountains here, it is hot. This is from this summer, where Death Valley became, well, it has been, but became again broke the record for the hottest place in the world, the hottest surface temperature at I think it was 135. But I went to the sign. I was actually in Death Valley this spring. It was like a balmy 70 degrees the entire time. It was great. But then
Oh.
seeing this at 133. There's also a golf course in the middle.
Really?
So there's an oasis where the freshwater aquifer just comes up out of the ground. And there's this hotel. So this was basically a forest before they came here. And they made a golf course into it. So if you have hubris such that you want to play golf in the hottest, driest location in the world, you can. But average temperature in the summer is well over 110 degrees, and rainfall in the hottest month of the year is 4 hundredths of an inch. about 1/16. No, it's 1/25 of an inch. Yeah, this is the lowest point in the United States, Badwater Basin, again about 250 feet below sea level. It is just so stifling. Like we one of the days, and I had the misfortune to actually go biking about 45 miles, and it was like 90 degrees. I thought I was actually gonna die.
Yeah, I can imagine what it would be like if you actually came and it was 133.
Yeah, really interesting is that only about 50 miles away is Sequoia National Forest. You can see right
Yeah.
here. Um, yeah, because once you get over these mountains, you get out of the high pressure valley, so then it just gets a lot colder. Like it's super trippy to be down here and then see snow on the top of those mountains.
Yeah.
But who is controlling the wall? Oh, okay, yeah. So this is an interesting drought. This is the drought monitor again. We need to have a union for the drought monitor reports. But you know how there was a shit ton of like rain and snow there last week?
Yeah.
So the updated report came out a few days ago, and this is a week's difference. This is being the week before, and this being the week after the storm. So, um, it helped, but it was a drop in the ocean. Really south of San Luis, it didn't really do anything. And then it looks like above that, it kind of just downgraded everything by one category.
Yeah.
But it's
So
interesting to see. So, you have Sonoma and Mendocino County got a lot of rain. Like the Bay Area got so much rain, it basically downgraded the whole area by a whole category. Central Valley didn't really do anything. But Northern Sierra, you got a lot. So if you look at the snowpack that's local to Southern California, you see it's not a whole lot. You have a little bit down here, but that's mostly going into the San Joaquin River. And is a little further down, but for the most part, pretty much all of Los Angeles water is either imported or drilled out of the ground. And it's also gotten from the Owens River right here, which captures the runoff on the eastern side. So if you live in Southern California, really anywhere in the metropolitan area, there's a good chance that your water is coming from the Metropolitan Water District of Southern California. So they contract about 2 million acre feet a year from the State Water Project and 1.5 from the Colorado River Aqueduct. But, obviously actual delivery amounts depend on the water year. And their allocation is obviously rarely met, if at all, because water they need to pump from the Delta, which is why this is from their website. They are huge proponents of the Delta Tunnel. So their rationale of climate change, so with more severe droughts and precipitation, it's going to capture enough water during big storms for drier times. This would only be true if building the Delta Tunnel meant they were building more reservoirs as well. I'm not sure where they were going with that.
it's weird.
This one didn't make sense at all because the whole reason that the Delta Tunnel is not built yet is because they're worried about an earthquake.
Yeah, that's the whole point of the water tunnel against earthquakes is that if the water tunnel you've made all your infrastructure depend on goes boom, you're kind of screwed, aren't you?
Yeah, and their rationale is that a lot of the infrastructure built on the Delta right now is like hella old, so a lot of aging levees, which is what they said there. Um, if some of those levees broke, it would not only flood a bunch of farmland, but it would also stop water deliveries until they could get them back up and running again. Um, but their main rationale is they want Northern Sierra water. So Northern Sierra water is clean and there's usually a lot of it, and they want it and then obviously San Francisco's equivalent does not want them to have rights to Northern Sierra water because they want it for themselves. So yet another gang war between the Bay Area and Los Angeles. So that's how it goes there. But if you live basically anywhere in Ventura, Los Angeles, Orange, or Imperial County, your water is coming from the Metropolitan Water District. So let's talk about shade balls. I know we talked about this a little bit, maybe a couple weeks ago,
Yeah, I think
but
last episode.
yeah, there's these little plastic balls that they put in reservoirs On the surface to prevent evaporation, but actually there's a much more interesting reason. So the biggest reservoir that has these, it's a little arrow right here in northwestern Los Angeles.
Yep.
It's super tiny, so you can actually see it. But it's Los Angeles Reservoir, and the reason is so you have chlorine, which is put into the water during treatment. So all of this water in this reservoir is already treated. So like if you see Lake Oroville or pretty much any other municipal reservoir, water from there then goes to treatment, then goes to customers. So this water has already been treated. So after it's been treated, this water is going straight to customers. So that's an important distinction because they've already put chlorine in here. And bromine is pretty much in any water that makes contact with the ground. And it's pretty much impossible to get out. And when those two things mix with sunlight, you get bromate, which is a well-known carcinogenic chemical. So they put in these shade balls here to stop sunlight from hitting the water on the surface to stop evaporation, and then to prevent the formation of bromate. But interestingly, they did save about 1.7 million cubic meters of water from evaporating from 2015 to 2017. But they did require 2.9 million cubic meters to manufacture.
It's a curious thought there.
They do have a service life of 10 years, though, and the plastic can be easily recycled.
That's good.
But, you know, obviously it's 1.7 times 5 is more than 2.9. So you are saving more water than you're using to produce them. So again, just all about these environmental opportunity costs. So you may have made 96 million little plastic things, but you are saving a lot more water.
Yeah, I was watching a documentary about I forget what it was called what was it called? Like environmental cost. Just sort of the notion that even if we're itemizing expenses, we should really be keeping into account how much it would cost the environment.
Yeah, it's all about
Because
like the social cost of climate change.
yeah,
So
on
legislators
paper,
look at okay, this policy. So if we were to stop natural gas mining in this county, okay, so how much greenhouse gas emissions would we be preventing versus how many people would lose their jobs, how much poverty would that cause, and then how much poverty and job loss would that equivalent climate change cost?
yeah. I mean, on paper, if you were to go into an area and say, "Hey, you can't use fossil fuels, you should use solar. It's better for this area." If it cost more, then people aren't going to use solar, they're going to use fossil fuels. But
Mm.
then you have to take into account, like, all right, if you're leveling areas so you can get oil or so you can get tar sands, then you're destroying a forest that people could walk through. And if
Mhm.
you're going to be, how do I describe it? You're using up a lot of land for fossil fuels, and you're destroying a lot of land with sort of extant dangers, and that's going to also possibly contaminate groundwater and do other things that you really didn't account for. So
Mhm.
maybe ultimately, in the long run, just because solar doesn't have any of those adverse effects, it would be cheaper.
Yeah. My question is, why can't they just like put a roof over this?
If I had to guess, it's probably something about the shape of it and the integrity of a roof that would
'Cause-
have to stretch all the way over.
Well, no, they could build like supports in there at some point because like the whole thing is concrete lined.
Yeah, it might not be as
Uh,
cost
I'm
effective.
I'm sure they have a reason. Yeah, I mean it is really big. Like this is the entire Los Angeles metro area, and this is still very visible. So this is like the size of a small town.
Yeah.
Um, so water consumption per capita. So got this graph here, which is City of Los Angeles water use and population. What I find interesting. So in Los Angeles area, at least as of 2018, you have a water use of about 112 gallons per person per day. So on average, each person is using 112 gallons of fresh water every day. That's not just, showering. That's the equivalent of whatever's used for industry. Everything used for industry, everything used for irrigation, divided by the number of people. And then this is the population. So the population has grown by 1.7 by about 1 million people in the last 50 years, but water use overall has gone down by about 50,000 acre feet. So that's interesting. And water use, so we're getting into a little bit of classism here. This is towns on the scale of average wealth versus how much water they're using per day. So Beverly Hills, obviously that's where all the celebrities are living. So their water use is 135 gallons per person per day. Then you have Burbank, 111, California average, and then, Los Angeles, Santa Monica. So that's interesting. And these various cities, just how much their water use is. So interestingly, the further south you go, the more water you're using. Kind of. That's not too surprising considering that, you got more stuff to water, more hubris, whatever. But what are people putting on their lawns? So this is some literature from the Los Angeles DWP. And they have some practical stuff like don't water your lawn 48 hours, don't allow runoff, use recycled water, use native plant species. And you got some deergrass, wild rye, purple 3-on, Berkeley sedge, some really beautiful native grasses. They require pretty much no irrigation. And this is the advice that Los Angeles and Southern California towns are giving to their citizens. Now, let's take a look at these.
Oh,
So these are some estates in Montecito, so it's a little bit north of Los Angeles, but this is where people like Oprah, some Google execs, so some really upper crust individuals live. Do any of these plants look like those beautiful native grasses we took a look at?
I see a lot of lush green lawns.
I do. So this is a very dry town. So they have these Hollywood elites, as you would call them, have some pretty cool tricks up their sleeves. They designate their polo fields as agricultural spaces, and then they have water trucked in from nearby towns. They pay about $15,000 a month for trucked in water. And Oprah, in particular, their neighbors have seen about like multiple trucks every day pull up to a property full of water. And about a third of the town ships in water for their estates.
That's pretty disgusting.
Yeah, and then they also mine all of the groundwater dry.
Ugh.
Yeah, so this is climate change. Climate change only affects people who can't afford to escape it. If you have the money, you can afford to ship in water. You can afford to move somewhere that you won't be affected. Or you can afford to change the landscape so you don't have to even think about it. But if you're like, everyone else, you got to follow these steps here. You got to hope that what you're doing is going to be enough. But it probably won't be because of the whales. So, yeah, classism and climate change are definitely hand in hand. The people who are causing climate change are the ones who are going to pay so they don't have to worry about it. While the people who actually have to deal with it are going to be suffering the most. Anything you want to say about that?
Not really. Classism's present wherever you go.
It is. Well, let's talk about the Los Angeles River here. So, it is kind of the pride of Los Angeles. It is it's dreary, it's concrete lined, occasionally it floods, but I have 4 pictures up here. Tell me which of these 4 are from GTA.
I'm gonna say that. Let's see. So they're your 4 in the top middle.
Yeah, these 4.
That bottom left one's actually.
This one?
Come to think of it. Oh, good question. Either they're all from GTA or they're not from GTA. It's either one or the other.
I'll pick one.
I gotta say they're all from GTA.
Yeah, all of these are from GTA.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I was looking at pictures, I was like, I want to see if you can tell the difference between the two.
It's tough.
Yeah, so these are actually pretty good comparisons. So it starts up in the north here as kind of a normal river, But its purpose is to drain this huge concrete slab of Los Angeles. So when it does rain here, literally all of this water goes to this river at some point. And the reason why it's concrete lined is because when it flooded before, it would widen the riverbank and widen it more and widen it more until it destroyed something. So you concrete line it, and then when you get a really rainy day, you're thankful that you concrete lined it.
Yeah.
So let's talk about, lastly, Southern California v climate change. So starting down here, this is it's Columbia Climate School's hazard index for how likely a place is for natural disasters. Los Angeles ranks the most likely for any given natural disaster in the US. So, wildfire hazard, obviously very high. Volcano hazard, none. That was kind of surprising. I would have thought there would be at least a low risk. Tornado and snowfall, low. Landslide, medium. Hurricane, none. Earthquake, drought, heat wave, avalanche, and sorry, earthquake, drought, heat wave, and flood are all high. So it ranks a 20. And then San Diego is pretty much everything but scaled down a bit, so it is a 17. So these areas are very vulnerable to natural disasters and climate change in general. And while they're not really too affected by the rainfall slope going down because they import most of their water anyway, it is getting spikier. If you look at this graph, the average might be negligibly going down, but over the years, it's getting spikier. So you have record high rainfall followed by record low rainfall in a matter of years. And then average temperature going up, rainfall going down, as you can see here. And also, the whole landscape is very low lying. It's called the basin for a reason. The water level, sea level rise is expected to be at least a couple feet by the end of the century, regardless of if all climate change stops right now. Sorry, regardless of all greenhouse gas emissions stop right now. And that gets to kind of the issue in general. California might seem very mountainous, and it is, but the Central Valley, again, lies if only a few feet above sea level, and a lot of San Francisco and the Bay Area in general is only, it depends because it's pretty hilly, but you can have ranges from like 200 feet above sea level to like below it. So a lot of people are at risk for increased flooding and storms or just flooding in general. And being a very blue state, about 59% of voters, sorry, 3/4 of voters want to cut the greenhouse gas emissions to 40% of their 1990 levels by 2030. And most interestingly, there was a proposal to ban the sale of gas-powered cars and trucks in 2035, but 49% of the state supported that. And that was better than I thought, because that's a very polarizing question.
Yeah, that's a tough one to answer because that really only gives the entire transportation industry 15 years to make up a good electric truck that they're going to depend on with their entire, industry.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I think it's limited only to like cars, so like what people drive. Trucks are
Like
gonna take
consumer vehicles.
yeah,
Even
trucks are gonna
oh,
take a while. I mean, electric trucks are probably in the foreseeable future only gonna be used for like crosstown trips. So like, you got a warehouse here and then you have another warehouse a few miles down the road and you need to get a 53-footer there. So I think that's the most practical use. Self-driving trucks, they're here. Those will probably take shape pretty quickly. But like electric long haul trucks, I don't see becoming a thing for a while. There's a few parts of climate change that once you get to 90% emissions reductions, that last 10% is almost impossible to stop. So for
it,
example, aviation. Um, Electric powered planes do exist, but they're slow. It's possible to make a very efficient biofuel aircraft, but obviously you're still using greenhouse gas emissions. So that last 10% is just so hard that it's almost not even worth it at that point.
Yeah, there's gonna be some stragglers. There's gonna be, people who base their life around antique cars and kind of can't go without fossil fuels.
Yeah, and you can't, again, you can't hold climate change to the bottom 1% of emitters. You need to hold the people who are doing all of it, like for the lion's share of it, accountable.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, yeah, people, it gets to the question of American individuality. For better or for worse, Americans have a strong sense of individuality. So like during the pandemic, I won't wear a mask, you can't tell me what to do. That's part of the American spirit. Whether we like it or not, this is a country that's built on individualism. And you look at other countries who were able to, the whole collective was able to shut down with very little resistance, like China. It's because China has a different national spirit, and during the pandemic, that served them better.
Yeah.
But the car is a interesting American expression of just freedom, and I can do what I want. I can like drive across the country if I want to, and no one can tell me I can't. But if you say you need to stop every however 100 miles for like
Yeah.
a half hour to charge up, or the car you can have is only these two kind of bland industrial looking cars. In my opinion, the secret to getting more people to buy electric cars is to make more options.
Yeah, right now,
Like if
I
you
was
see
looking at electric cars a little bit ago. There's no electric Cooper convertible.
like
There's just none.
if you see some of the Ford cars that are going into production now, like they have like they're electric cars that look pretty much exactly like their gas counterparts, which is good.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my story there. So the next episode we're going to get into water restrictions and freedoms. This is a really funny picture I found, and it's just of someone's like barely graying lawn, and the news headline is "Costly Conservation?" question mark.
It's
Like
just some guy's lawn.
oh
That's not a
God,
bad
no,
thing.
the lawn. What are we gonna do?
Won't someone think of my grass?
Oh God, my grass that was not meant to live in this environment. What am I gonna do? All right.
People buy grass all the time that's like just not meant for them.
Southern California does have a well, no, my opinion, what I think caused it is like the Southern California population boom in like the 60s and 70s had like a bunch of people from the Northeast and Midwest for like aerospace and movie jobs or whatever, and they wanted that Midwest or Northeast like lawn. And then now you're getting to the point where you need to pay people to get rid of their lawns.
Yeah, there were. Oh my God, when I worked at the hardware store, there were so many people that were like insistent on Kentucky bluegrass,
Oh, they love their Kentucky bluegrass,
that
don't they?
variety only. And
Like there's like many other types of grasses, right?
there's many, all with better water requirements and better drought tolerance. But people just love their weird grass that looks slightly better for so many different downsides.
They do. Again, Americans love their individuality, and we'll see
Yeah.
how that suits us. All right. Anything else?
Nope, I think that'll be it.
All right. Thank you for listening. We've been Calfire Crackpots. We will see you next time.
Don't let them tell you this is on your back. The point of contention is how they act. Where you draw the line will set you free. The debate is over.